that's the gist of the market. But let's take the discussion forward with Shiv Chanani, who's joining us from BNB Paribas Mutual Fund. Shiv, afternoon. Thanks so much for your time. Let's start by understanding your view on the IT space. The large cap IT space overall has shown, kind of anemic growth and nothing great coming out of the commentary as well. Uh, what is your outlook there? How are you positioned in large cap IT? And also talk to us about mid cap IT, where numbers are good, but then valuations are not very cheap either.
Good afternoon, Ajay, and thanks for having me today afternoon. So I think IT is a pretty interesting space at this point of time, where probably the entire space is going through what we call the corridor of uncertainty. So when you look at one layer below, which is the underlying customers of the IT companies, uh, most of them which are in the US, one can, perceive the kind of uncertainty that they are going through because you don't know when the rate cuts are going to be, uh, how uh, how much of those rate cuts would actually take place. Then, of course, as you go forward in the Q4 of the calendar year, you will be looking for the elections there as well. So I think that that kind of uncertainty is fairly understandable. And I guess that's what is reflecting in the commentary of most of the IT companies that you hear. So if you see, there is a bit of a dichotomy in the commentary when they are talking about pretty strong order books, pretty strong TCVs. But at the same time, they are saying that, look, we are looking at probably low single digit kind of a growth in the foreseeable future. And that's exactly what's happening, that you know that the demand is out there, but the underlying customers are just a little bit of guarded when it comes to committing to that spend. So the sum and substance is that obviously that particular pent up demand is going to come back at some point of time, as and when most of these variables settle down. Till that extent, I think you would have to sort of, uh, play with this kind of an uncertainty and say that, okay, like, look, I would probably look for certain definite signs before I go and fully commit to the IT space. And when you talk about the large cap versus the mid cap, so again, I think within the mid cap, you need to sort of differentiate between the IT companies. You will have the usual run of the mill IT services companies, which are probably smaller format of the larger ones. And then you will have a vertical focused kind of companies which probably have their own niche, and that
Right.
probably will still continue to do well.
That's
So
a very
that's
nice
how we
way.
sort of look at this
That's
space.
a very smart way. You've given us a lot of food for thought. Tara Tech, Persistent, KPIT, but you put it very well. The smaller version of the large cap peers. Shiv, I want to get your take on auto space. You have a few large names there, some auto ancillary too. Now the passenger vehicle part of the business is getting slightly competitive. M&M is, launching some very category disruptors. There are other unlisted Hyundais of the world doing very well. And on the other hand, I want to understand what's happening in the CV part of the business. Tata Motors has small CV now, others have bigger. But your thoughts on the CV part of the auto business, which has not been spoken about much, is the tide turning? Are there signs in the second half, or you would stick to, the bets which you have mostly in PV and two wheelers?
So I think the entire auto space itself is pretty interesting because the entire space is going through the transformation. What we call the transition that this space has not seen since the time of ICE engines were invented. Having said that, I think when we talk about the commercial vehicle, again, I think there the dynamics are changing, particularly when you think about how the entire logistics infrastructure in the country itself is changing, right? And the CV sector will respond to that particular changes. So some of it we are already seeing, where when you look at the volumes doesn't inspire a lot of confidence. But when you start to think from a tonnage that is being sold, the tonnage is significantly higher than what the volumes will suggest. And I think that is something that will continue as we go forward. because you will have, the two ends of the spectrum which will do well. One is the higher tonnage vehicles, and as well as the lower tonnage, which are, the last mile connectivity. So I think, the sector will probably continue on those same trend as probably we have seen already playing out in the last 2, 3 years. But I think that trend will just accelerate as the logistics infrastructure develops more and more for the country.
Positioned on telecom to understand the factors which are at play. Bharti, Vodafone, both have spoken about the impending tariff hike which may happen very soon in the next few months. Some kind of technological overhauling happening at Vodafone front too, but mostly the commentary which are coming. Do you think after 4, 5 years, if these price hikes happen, tariff hikes happen, it could meaningfully alter their overall earnings picture of this sector?
So of course, if there is a tariff hike, that clearly puts them in a much healthier earnings as well as a balance sheet kind of positioning. To telecom, you will need to sort of keep abreast with the technology, and this is one sector where the technology changes are most frequent, right? So in that sense, any bit of a price hikes or better earnings will give them that kind of an ammo to sort of go ahead and spend for the future.
Shiv, you have in a small cap fund some very interesting names from the market infrastructure side. I want to understand, not a reaction on this particular name, KFinTech, but not only this, there are half a dozen companies now. AMCs are there, CDSLs, CAMs are there, stock companies like KFins are there, then wealth managers are there, exchanges are listed. I want to understand from this entire about 10 stocks, what is your thoughts on this part of the market, which are market infrastructure, and now the retail flows into the market appear very structural. Do they have long runway of compounding?
I'm glad that brought out that particular point, and we as a house are fairly excited about what you call the capital market infrastructure plays. Uh, a lot of these plays, actually, if you look at, they are not highly volatile like what we have been used to maybe 15 or 20 years ago when we talked about the capital market plays in India. Like you said, that a lot of them are more secular. I am a little reserved in terms of talking about a complete secular, because what we have learned over a period of time is that nothing is secular in nature, and there are cycles always involved in any sector that we look at. But on a relative basis, yes, the runway for growth for a lot of these companies is far, far longer as we go forward. I mean, whether you talk about the wealth managers, whether you talk about asset management companies, or whether you talk about the depositories and the other technology oriented companies in the capital market space. So clearly we believe that that's a pretty solid space to be in, which is going to be far less volatile, and will have a good growth path as we go forward.
Right. All right, Shiv, great chatting. Thanks so much for your time. That was
Thank
Shiv
you so
Chanani
much.
of BNP Paribas Mutual Fund. Talk about markets and also select areas of where they have representation in their fund. We'll take a short break.
If you like this video, then like, share and subscribe to ET Now.